Hello children, in this class we are going to study the Romantic Age, and I'm going to briefly give you the historical and social background of the Romantic Age. See, the Romantic movement cannot be given a precise date. It developed slowly till it came to a head in 1798. Politically, it was an active period. England was thrilled by the outbreak of French Revolution in 1789, and it was an age of new inventions. Improvements were made in mining, textile, and metal industries. So, Romanticism was an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe toward the end of 18th century. The publishing of William Wordsworth's Lyrical Ballads in 1798 is taken as the beginning, and the crowning of Queen Victoria in 1837 as its end. So, as I said, the Romantic movement cannot be given a precise date. The Romantic period was one of the major social change in England because of the depopulation of the countryside and the rapid development of overcrowded industrial cities that took place in the period roughly between 1798 and 1832. And let us see the historical and the social overview of the period. The movement in England was the result of two forces. So, this movement was the result of two forces. Let us see what are those two. So, first is the agricultural revolution. Agricultural revolution that involved the enclosure of the land, drove workers off the land, and the second one is the industrial revolution. This provided them employment in the factories and mills operated by machines driven by steam power. So indeed, Romanticism may be seen in part as a reaction to the industrial revolution. So the first movement, as I said, is agricultural revolution. Let us see what this agricultural revolution is. Agricultural revolution is nothing but a gradual transformation of the traditional agricultural system that began in Britain in the 18th century. So the agricultural revolution was the unprecedented increase in agricultural production in Britain due to the increases in labor and land productivity in 19th centuries. And the second reason was this industrial revolution. In fact, agricultural revolution, which was an essential prelude to the industrial revolution. So the process of change from an agrarian and handicraft economy to one dominated by industry and machine manufacturing. So that is industrial revolution. And if you see the term romantic, actually first appeared in 18th century English and originally meant romance-like, that is, resembling the fanciful character of medieval romances. But a mood or a movement whose central characteristic is revolt and whose stress is on self-expression and individual uniqueness does not lend itself to precise definition. So there is no precise definition for this romanticism. So what is it? It's stress on self-expression and individual uniqueness. So if you see at the beginning of the Romantic period, Britain was still an agrarian economy with much of the population employed as rural workers or in domestic service. And by the end of the period, it was a rapidly industrializing nation with mushrooming town and cities. And in the 18th century, there was actually no real class consciousness. So I repeat, in the 18th century, there was no real class consciousness. But by 1830, something like a modern class consciousness had emerged, with more clearly identifiable as upper, middle, and working classes. The increasing size of the population expanded the labor force as well as the demand for goods and services. So by the mid-19th century, Britain had become the world's first urbanized society. There were substantial changes in agriculture as the countryside was transformed. And many movements of the late 18th and early 19th centuries were engendered by the Romantic philosophy. So what is the philosophy? That is the desire to be free of convention and tyranny. So this was the philosophy, the desire to be free of convention or traditional norms and tyranny, and the new emphasis on the rights and the dignity of the individual. So Romanticism emphasized the rights and dignity of the individual. The general Romantics' dissatisfaction with the organization of society was often channeled into specific criticism of the bourgeois society, and the feeling of oppression was frequently expressed in poetry. And the political and social causes became dominant themes in Romantic poetry and prose throughout France and other parts of Europe, producing many vital human documents that are still pertinent. Romantics, they believed that men and women ought to be guided by warm emotions rather than the cold, abstract rules and rituals established by bourgeois society. They believed that men and women should be guided by emotions rather than by rules. And Romantic movement was nothing more than a protest against bourgeois conventions, bourgeois society, and morality. So it was nothing more than a protest against bourgeois conventions, bourgeois society, and morality. And now we are moving on to the next part, that is a continental influence, which actually promoted or contributed to the growth or development of Romanticism. The teachings of Rousseau and the principles of the French Revolution helped to form and direct the ideas of the Romantics and to make them widely accepted in England. Rousseau preached the return to nature. His writings won him hosts of followers on the continent and in England. With the threefold ideal of liberty, equality, and fraternity, many of them saw the dawn of a new hope for the human race. The most celebrated exponent of the late 17th century was the British physician and philosopher John Locke. So Locke's essay concerning human understanding, which was published in the year 1690, laid the foundation of an Enlightenment theory of mind. And next influential philosopher who influenced the writers is Immanuel Kant. Kant is said to have effected a Copernican revolution in European thought and laid the foundation for the romantic idealism of Coleridge, Thomas De Quincey, and Thomas Carlyle. Romanticism in English literature started with the poets William Blake, William Wordsworth, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And it continued into the 19th century with the second generation Romantic poets, most notably P.B. Shelley, John Keats, and Lord Byron. So, Romanticism is defined as an instinct for the elemental simplicities of life. So, Rousseau's call, written to nature, was part of a large naturalism that sought to bring people back to the bosom of nature. The great Romantic poets found inspiration in the simplicities of life, like an ordinary sunset, a walk over the hills, a cluster of spring flowers, the rain-bearing west wind, even the song of the nightingale. All these gave happiness. All these the poets, the Romantic poets, in all these they could find inspiration. So such are the few of the subjects that inspired to supreme achievements. See, imagination is the cardinal characteristic of Romanticism. The Romantic revival in 19th century England was a sharp reaction against neoclassical conventions of literature. Poetry to them was the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions. It is the poet's own emotions that found expression in his poetry. So the background of English Romantic movement was furnished by the French Revolution as a historical event and by the revolutionary philosophy as an ideology. The era of Romantic revival was emphatically an age of poetry, as the previous century, with its practical outlook on life, was largely on the prose. So the Romantic poets are generally classified into two generations. You might be knowing the older poets consisting of Wordsworth, Coleridge, Southey, and they were grouped together as late poets. The poets of the latter Romantic period, that is especially Byron and Shelley, were inspired by the revolution as an ideal and not as a social event. But if you see John Keats, he was wholly untouched by the revolutionary ideals. And with this, stop the class. Remaining, we'll see next class. Thank you.